Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome. Very warm welcome from South Africa and a not so warm Cape Town. I am Tess Pruis. I am the president of South Africa and also the founder of Crystal Events Africa. Our moderators and panelists today certainly need no introduction. We are so pressed for time. I'm going to allow everybody to introduce themselves, but moderating with me today, very happy to have Padraig Gilligan, the Chief Marketing Officer of SITE. We've got Linda Pereira from CPL Events. We have John Howell from Aviation, and they'll be helping me steer through this very important discussion today. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. You'll only, you won't have any sound or video. You'll see the panelists. As far as Q&As go, please pop in your who you are, where you're from in the chat box, and fire off your questions into the Q&As, and our team will try and redirect those questions as much as possible. So our topic today is quite an enormous one. Our industry's been hit by a tsunami a year ago, with a staggering number of businesses that have closed down, job lost. We are potentially faced with an oversupply of talent. And in the meantime, people need jobs. They end up going somewhere else. They are absorbed by other industries. Hotels, DMCs, everybody are struggling to manage the workforce. How much of our talent is being lost to other industries permanently? What are we going to do when business comes back? Will we be able to service our groups the way we did before? Are we looking at a massive loss of skills? Is the older generation having to make way for a younger generation? Many, many questions to explore. And today we'll be looking at various aspects of our industry, including education, including government and tourism. And our expert team of panelists will help us guide us through those quagmires of big questions. And yeah, please ask away. What I'd like to do is, first of all, welcome Padraig Gilligan, the Chief Marketing Officer of SITE, as I've mentioned. He is going to give us an overview of where the future of incentive travel lies. Padraig, may I hand over to you? Thank you very much and welcome.
Thanks, Tess, and good morning to everybody. It's kind of a dull but increasingly spring-like day here in Dublin. So I think we're vaguely in the same time zone, running right down through kind of Africa. We're at 10 o'clock in the morning here, so I think you're 12 o'clock there. I'm going to just share my screen and jump straight into a presentation that I've put together for you, which I hope will set off a good kind of thought process for the rest of your day. I'm going to be talking about the Incentive Travel Industry Index, which is a pan-industry survey that was undertaken in September and October of 2020. So very much in the midst and at the height of the pandemic as it spread to all kind of four corners of the world. And I'm going to draw from this research some insights, which I hope will also answer the questions around the future service delivery in the hospitality industry, which is obviously the framing focus for today's conversation. Just always to thank the people who make these surveys possible, Destination Canada, Abu Dhabi, Accor, and of course IMEX Group are very much supporters of what we have done. And the survey is undertaken by three different but related industry associations. So SITE, the Society for Incentive Travel Excellence, we're a global organization, as you all know, with around 2,000 members in 90 countries around the world. And we're joined by IRF, the Incentive Research Foundation, and FICP, the Finance and Insurance Conference Professionals organizations, along with Oxford Economics as our research partner in providing this Incentive Travel Industry Index to the incentive travel industry at large. That's who I am. That's what I look like. I've actually changed my picture recently. I realized I was showing a picture of when I made my confirmation when I was about 14. So I've changed to a grown-up picture, and the new hairstyle that I've been wearing ever since the pandemic prevented hair from being cut in the part of the world that I live in. The survey was very extensive, as you can see from your screen, just under 3,000 responses altogether from 41 source markets and 91 destinations. So in the survey, we make a distinction between a source market, which is a market out of which incentive travel is contracted, and a destination, which is a country into which incentive travel is delivered. So obviously South Africa would be both a source market and a destination. Ireland would be mainly a destination, although there is some source market activity coming out of here. Great Britain would be a source market and a destination. The United States would be the same. So as you can see, some countries have both source market and destination status. Others are predominantly one or the other. So 91 destinations, 41 source markets, very, very much representative of the global reality of incentive travel. And then incentive travel comes out of a corporate environment. Everything that we do within the business event space is in support of corporate objectives, for which incentive travel is obviously the solution. And those different industry verticals that we've been actually working with and that come out most prominently in this survey are finance and insurance, automotive, pharma, IT, and direct selling. We do have data from 19 different industry verticals, but those 5 are the top 5 represented in the survey. So I think those of us who are involved in incentive travel, when we see those particular sectors, we say, yes, they are the sectors that we know. They're the ones that we see most when we're organizing incentive travel experiences. In terms of demographics, North America made up 43%, which means that overall, despite its dominance in terms of the whole incidence of incentive travel in the world, it still makes up the minority of responses, with 57% of the responses coming from outside of North America. APAC 14%, Latin America 9%, and then Europe, Middle East, and Africa 34%. For the purposes of the slides that I'm going to share with you today, I have been able to slice and dice a little bit more. So I will be able to show some responses that reflect MEA, Middle East and Africa only. So Middle East and Africa as an isolated region and how it compares with the responses from other regions. So hopefully that will provide some good insights in relation to today's discussion. I'm starting with the probably the most important one. I mean, and in a way, maybe the obvious one. Did COVID-19 have an impact on the global incentive travel industry? Well, you betcha it did. It devastated us. But the interesting thing, and what we were trying to pick up in this particular kind of question or query in the survey was it only devastation? Was there anything else that happened as a result of COVID-19 in our industry that wasn't negative? And the interesting thing in this slide is that there are some underlying signs of positive impact as a result of this kind of pause that happened in our industry. And those positive impacts are in regard to things like better work-life balance, obviously, but also the encouragement of an entrepreneurial spirit within our industry, a resilience within our industry that allows our people to find new opportunities in the crisis. And we're seeing that in this particular slide as well. But overall, what we're seeing is that the impacts are mainly temporary, mainly focused on cost cutting, but, and here's the positive, also focused on developing new skills, developing new revenue streams, achieving better work-life balance. So that's the aggregate picture that I've put on the screen here. This is what all regions in the world have aggregated out by way of a response. And the number one item here to help those who are not able to actually see the clarity of or that they desire on the screen. The number one reason was reduced budgets, reduced company hours, salaries and benefits was number two. The suspension of all business travel was number three. The furloughing and the laying off of staff was number four. So that's the aggregate picture in the world. And I've highlighted at the end the 7% figure, which is the number of businesses that closed, restructured, or were sold as a result of the pandemic. And remember, this particular index was taken in September, October of last year. So it's about 6 months into the pandemic. We're now a year. So this was the picture 6 months ago, with 7% declaring themselves to have closed, restructured, or to have sold their business. Now, here's the interesting one. This is Middle East and Africa only. So I've taken out the Europe figures, and I'm presenting just Middle East and Africa. And I'll draw attention to one thing at the very end here is the bigger number, sadly, that we're seeing here, which is 11%. So the global aggregate figure was 7%. The Middle East Africa figure is 11% of businesses that actually closed, restructured, or sold the businesses. So the impact of COVID-19 in the Middle East and Africa region was more devastating at that level. In terms of the other impacts, well, again, we're seeing reduced company hours and salaries as number one, reduced budgets as number two, the suspension of business travel, but here's an interesting one. In the fourth position here, we're seeing the intensification of digital and virtual marketing, which indicates the kind of the new focus that many of our businesses found, the new revenue streams that many of our businesses found, the new positioning that many DMCs aimed for, where not being able to accept incoming incentive travel groups into their destination, they looked at how they could actually use existing manpower, existing expertise, and upskill into adjacent areas. So doing more digital, doing more virtual marketing. And in some cases, that was the creation of virtual site inspections to keep the destination front and center. In other cases, it was facilitating perhaps local corporates in the digital and virtual needs that they may have had as a result of the pandemic. So there you go. That's how the Middle East and Africa region behaved in relation to the impact. When we look at recovery, it's very interesting. So the figure here, or the screen here, is showing 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So it's showing kind of a 4-year horizon based on a 2019 baseline. So the orange line that runs across the middle of the screen is the 100% that we achieved in our industry in 2019. And then the bar charts below that show how far below or above that baseline we reached in each of the 4 years of the horizon. So obviously this is a forecast. So in 2020, in September, October 2020, our colleagues in over 90 countries around the world were declaring themselves to be down very, very significantly on the 2019 figure. So you can see that the blue is all regions, the orange is the US, the gray is EU, and the yellow is Canada. So I just picked out one individual country as well, Canada, to show how it was actually behaving relative to the others. So you can see more or less a similar kind of fall, where the average is 23% of the 2019 level. So that's a 77% drop. Now, strangely, Middle East and Africa is only showing it's showing itself at 43%, which means that it only dropped by 57%. So it's out of step with the other regions in terms of how far down it fell in revenues and in activities from the 2019 levels. Following that across, and let's follow, say, the blue line. So the blue line is on the left hand of each of the bar charts, and that represents all regions. So down to 23% of the 2019 levels in 2020, 59% in 2021, 88% in 2022. So approaching recovery in 2022, and then exceeding the 2019 levels in 2023. That's what the aggregate picture in the world was. Take the US. US is very much the bellwether, very much the country that leads when it comes to incentive travel experiences. It was down 75% to 25% in 2020. It predicts being up to 63% of the 2019 levels in 2021, 92% in 2022, and then it predicts that by 2023, it will have exceeded the 2019 levels and will be at 116%. And that's very much the leader in terms of the different regions around the world. You can see EU, which is in the gray, is still lagging behind the 2019 levels by 2023, as is Canada. However, Middle East and Africa is bang on. Middle East and Africa increases to 65% in 2021, reaches recovery really, more or less, in 2022, but doesn't show then a huge difference between 22 and 23. So that was the kind of the forecast for recovery in the different regions, with Middle East and Africa bang on, suffering less in 2020, doing better in 21 than the average, better in 22 than the average, but then not really showing much of an increase between 22 and 23. So let's take a look at destination selection. So we've said already the North American buyers are very much the bellwether buyers. They're the ones that kind of set out the stall, the biggest programs, probably the most lucrative programs. So what destinations were they predicting in 2018, in 2019, and 2020 that they would be using? So just to explain, the figures for 2018 are the destinations that North American buyers said at that time they would be using in the ensuing years. So the 2018 figures refer to 19, 20, 21, and 22. So there's a kind of a 3 to 4 year horizon after the year that's actually indicated here. So 2019 the same, and 2020. So the 2020 figures or the 2020 destinations here are the ones that in September and October, so at the height of the pandemic, these are the destinations that North American buyers said they would be looking to in terms of placing incentive travel experiences. Now, the list goes down to about 15, and you can see that in 2018, there isn't mention really of any Africa country or region at all. Neither is there in 2019, but interestingly, in 2020, we do have mention of Africa. So by and large, and this has always been the case, by and large, the regions that regions tend to place most business in are the regions out of which the incentive travel experiences are contracted in the first instance. So most North American business stays in North America. About 10% of it goes elsewhere. And that's the bit ultimately that the rest of us in destinations around the world are competing for. So you can see in 2018, United States, not surprisingly, was the number one destination for for North American buyers, then the Caribbean, then Mexico, then Western Europe is coming in there very strongly. In 2019, Western Europe is in the second position. So Europe had taken a bigger kind of dominance in terms of the intentionality of North American buyers. In 2020, well, Western Europe goes down to 9th position. All of the destinations that are predicted to be used at the height, you know, when people are actually making these predictions at the height of the pandemic, they're all contiguous destinations. They're all beside the United States. So Canada, Hawaii, Caribbean, Mexico, Alaska. So it's surprising at all to see that Africa is mentioned. The more surprising thing is the definition of other Africa. So I've taken this from the survey because we divided Africa into those 5 different areas. So Southern Africa, which we defined as South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Namibia as an example. North Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia. West Africa, Togo, Ghana, and Benin. East Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania. And then we put a catch-all, which was other Africa. And that's a very, very surprising thing to see, that other Africa was selected in the 2020 destination list by North American buyers. When we go to the UK, which I know is a huge destination for Africa in general, South Africa in particular, we do see that Middle East and Africa countries are mentioned in each of the 3 years that we're actually looking at. So Gulf states in Southern Africa occurring in 2018, Southern Africa in 2nd position in 2019, and then in 2020, Gulf states still in 3rd position, all other African destinations not mentioned at all, but other Africa cropping up again there, which is very, very interesting. So that's a little bit just on destination selection, what the index is telling us about that. In terms of program design and inclusions, what is the index telling us? How is the pandemic going to actually change how we design incentive travel experiences, what we include in them? So again, by comparison, we can see the dramatic difference. So in 2019, when the survey was undertaken, the number 1 inclusion was cultural experiences, which is not surprising. Group dining was number 2, team building was number 3, and luxury or bucket list experiences was number 4. So if you analyze that, what you're seeing there is you're seeing a focus on travel. So an incentive travel experience naturally is going to be all about the travel experience itself. But we're seeing as well a focus on elements in the program that are, I suppose, able to reinforce corporate objectives. So group dining, bringing people together, creating that company culture, team building, cross-functional divisions working together in a team building environment during an incentive to get to know each other, again, building company culture. So you have a combination here of the delight of travel and the corporate objectives being kind of subtly integrated into the program design. When you switch into 2020, so again, I keep emphasizing this, this is what people said in September, October of 2020. They said that luxury bucket list experiences would be the number 1 inclusion. Why? Well, take something away from me, I want it even more. Deny me the option to go to Cape Town and look at Table Mountain. I want it. I want that bucket list experience. You know, I want to go on safari even more now. So when we take away the things that we have become accustomed to, we actually appreciate them even more. So planners are already realizing that the new incentive travel, which will open after the pandemic, will focus on the intrinsic joy of travel. Cultural experiences are still very much in there, but look, CSR is now there too. So we will travel again, but we'll travel with a conscience. We'll travel mindful of the impact of our travel and mindful of the good that we can do with our travel. And wellness is there too, naturally. You know, when we travel, we want that travel experience to be transformative, both of body and mind and soul. So that's very, very much an indication of where our thinking is in relation to the future design of incentive travel. I'll just summarize it for you now quickly. And this is a little tiny kind of snapshot into a very, very rich data set that's available and online at incentivindex.com. So go there and see the rest of the survey yourself. But in the meantime, the EMA region is impacted by COVID-19 in relation to the closure of businesses and reductions in salaries and benefits. a bit more than other regions. EMA is less impacted in 2020 than other regions and is more optimistic about the recovery than the EU, for example. EMA is not on the radar for US buyers, except for this mysterious other Africa. And there's a dramatic refocus on program inclusions, with bucket list experiences now a top ranking element. So Tess, that's it. That's all I have to share with you, or all I have time to share with you for this morning. I hope it's useful in terms of providing some basis for discussion around the really, really important elements that you're going to be talking about today. And back to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, Tess, if you can just restart your video. I think we might have lost Tess, actually. Tess, are you there? Okay. Hi, everyone. This is John from Aviadev Africa. While we're waiting on Tess to come back, what I wanted to do is just, we wanted to get some feedback from you guys. So we're going to run a quick poll, and this is also for the panelists. So we'd like everybody just to gauge some sort of idea of sentiment. So the poll should be on your screen now. So it's a general question here about the pandemic and the topic that we're talking about today. So how damaging is the pandemic to skills retention and development in African travel and tourism? So obviously some of the info that Padre was very much all about sentiment and where we think things are going to come back and how soon they're going to come back. So what do you think? How positive are you out there? Is this permanent damage we're never going to recover from? Is it temporary and we're going to recover within 3 years? Is it simply a blip and we'll recover, which I think was a little bit what Padraig and, you know, from our side on the aviation side, it's definitely people are saying, look, this isn't going away, but it's going to take a bit longer than we thought initially. So we'll give it another 20 seconds or so, and then hopefully Tess will be back with us. Maybe she's having some load shedding issues, but she seems to have dropped off. So we'll see how it goes. All right, another, pretty much everybody's voted now, last 5 seconds, and then I'll share the results with you. Okay, here we go. Okay, so most of you are positive enough that you believe it's going to be temporary. So we're going to recover within the next 3 years. That might have been informed by what you had for us as well, Patrick. So, you know, that's great. And I'm glad that there's only 7% that think it's permanent. So that means we've got an optimistic bunch on the webinar today. So that is wonderful. Okay, so I believe the next session was actually going to be hosted by Tess, and she's not here. So I was thinking maybe Linda. Maybe Linda is with us, so maybe we can bring you forward.
Okay, if I have all my panel members, I'm quite happy to take over. So I would need Nelly, which I can see is here. I would need Esty. Is Esty here? Yes, she is. And Nicanor. So if we're all here, maybe we can switch on our cameras. Nelly, Esty, and Nicanor, can we switch on our cameras, and then we can start our session. Hi, Nelly. Hi, Esty, and Nicanor. Looking forward to having you. Okay. Hi, guys. Okay. Thank you so much. So we were suddenly surprised by having to come on, but we can do that. We have so little time, so let's get right down to it. Okay. So I have Nelly Stewart from the University of South Africa and a certified meetings professional. I have Esty Venske, who's from the Cape Peninsula University of Tech, and I was absolutely told I have to be very careful how I say it. And of course, her area of expertise is event management. And I have, thank you so much, nice to meet you, Nicanor Sabula, who's fascinated by international politics and how they influence the quality of life of populations. So guys, I thought that the best way to start is just go straight to the question. Our question here today is, are we losing new hospitality students due to the pandemic, and how are internships being facilitated? I thought if we started by attacking this and each of you could give me 2 or 3 thoughts on this topic, then we can get right to the meaty stuff of our conversation. So I'll start with Nelly. Nelly.
Thank you so much, Linda, and good afternoon to everyone that is attending this webinar this afternoon. Yeah, Linda, I think we all are very concerned when the pandemic hits, and we thought that that will have a dramatic impact on education. And although this is concerning, I think we must also look at the opportunities that are emanating from this specific pandemic. And there's 2 opportunities that I would like to share with everyone this afternoon. First of all, institutions of higher learning use this time to revise our curriculums, and we had to investigate alternative pedagogies on how we want to facilitate practical exposure to our students. Now, for example, at the University of South Africa, we have an annual advisory board meeting where the industry stakeholders can guide us on how we can develop our modules and how we can adapt the curriculum to the changes and the trends in the market. Now, as an open distance e-learning institution, we have replaced work integrated learning with what we refer to as work simulation already in 2018. And this was based on the trends that we've monitored and based on the guidance that we received from the industry. So when our students were unable to be placed in the industry, everything was already in place and we could continue with the practical components that our students require in order to get their qualifications. This has also provided the students additional opportunities and exposures to an array of activities and how they can learn how the world of work is working, and how they can, for instance, do practical exposure on the designing of an event, or how to write a curriculum vitae, or even how to apply for a job. Now, secondly, there is a great opportunity for the industry role players to become mentors, and they can become part of the success story of our students. And here it's very important that we start to instill a mindset of entrepreneurship and innovation in our students. So although at the moment everyone was a little bit overwhelmed, I think that there's great opportunities that has emanated from this. Thank you.
What an amazing learning curve this year has been. We've kind of all been shoved 5 years into the future, and learning to handle it, you are right, is one of our main tasks. Esty, how do you feel about this issue?
There we go. I'm so worried I might have the same problem as Tess. We've also got load shedding and power cuts outside, so I'm just apologizing in advance.
Fingers crossed.
So, fingers crossed. So prior to the pandemic, in 2018, there was quite a big growth for the MICE sector. And in alignment with that, there was a lot of vocational institutions that actually offered more and more of these MICE-specific qualifications. So that was growing and quite an exciting time. And as Nelly has mentioned, we used that time to build new curriculum and to put very exciting curriculum in place. And the demand was just phenomenal. It was a very popular course. Fast forward to 2021, and it's very difficult to motivate students. And you want good students. You want academically robust students that can handle this very dynamic sector. And it has been more difficult to get the enrollments in place that we would have liked to get. And we're based in Cape Town, which is South Africa's events mecca. And it's even obvious for us. It's almost like we mustn't forget that we have to, yes, market to get our tourists here, but similarly, we've got to market our industry to students and to people to say that this is still going to be an exciting industry. And that's what we're grappling with. To be honest, I don't know what to say to a prospective student. Yes, I don't know when the sector will be up and running. But also on a positive note, we did some research also to find out, right, we did this curriculum. I almost feel everything is outdated. And I shared with a colleague, I almost feel like a fraud lately because, you know, I know how to organize events for 2,000 people, the health and safety protocols for that. When it comes to hybrid events, I have never organized one myself. So now I have to job shadow just to learn how to do it so I can teach my students. That whole curriculum that we put together is almost null and void. Not completely, but, you know, you've got new emerging jobs. Social media officers, health and safety officers, event compliance officer. So there are new skills that we obviously need to embed. And that being said, we cannot do this as academic institutions without collaborating with our industry counterparts. And I think that would be the most important thing. That's why it's so important for us academics to be part of these things. Whatever is shared is like such wonderful information. We can take it back and see how we can integrate our steps and our advisory boards and our meetings to get a closer relationship with industry. Because if we're going to fill that industry gap, that skills gap, we've got to know exactly what you need. It doesn't help I'm producing students on 2018's curriculum. And I don't know what the new curriculum is unless I talk to somebody and you say, this is what we need. So yeah, from my side, very open and excited to try this new thing. And thank you for the opportunity to share.
It's actually quite interesting because what you're saying, Esti, is exactly what I've been experiencing internationally and even in Europe itself, where we've had all through 2020, we've had so much communication with the industry. There have been continuous meetings between academia and industry in designing what the companies will need coming forward and creating postgraduate courses, executive MBAs, etc., that are answers to the market that is coming on the horizon.
Exactly.
That's the vision. That's the vision. So Nicanor, what's your view on the question that is before us today?
Thank you very much, Linda, for the opportunity. And let me begin by saying that I'm not an academic, unlike my colleagues, you know, Nelly and Bestie. So I'll be speaking from the practitioner's point of view. I sit on the board of the Association of Kenya Business Events that I also represented as an interim, you know, chief executive there. So I'll be speaking from the experience of what I'm hearing, you know, my members say. And it is quite fascinating and interesting. You know, what Professor Swart and Esti are saying is the same information, you know, that I'm hearing here in Kenya. You know, and this is supported, you know, by just the poll that John just ran a short while ago, that actually showing the level of optimism that exists even, you know, amidst what we're going through. What I'm hearing when speaking to the people in academia and who run, you know, tourism and hospitality schools is that they are surprised that they were expecting that going through this pandemic, they will see suppressed number in terms of students that are actually taking on courses. But they have been surprised that most of them have maintained the numbers of the same students they had prior to the pandemic. And curiously, I was asking them, why do they think this is so? You know, and one thing that was very interesting is generally the optimism, you know, that we've gone through this process of suppressed demand in the market, and they are very optimistic that we are going to emerge out of this pandemic stronger, and there will be more and bigger opportunities for students. So they want to prepare for those opportunities, you know, once the pandemic sort of like normalized, once we get into the new normal. So that surprised me. The other interesting thing was, you know, they were telling me, speaking to the parents that were bringing, you know, these kids to school, was the question of, last year, a lot of children spend the time out of school, and it's been a little bit of pressure because most of them had finished their secondary education the previous year. So sort of like to try and get these kids to go out and do something is one of the things that actually is pushing them to take them back to school. So that also surprised me, that the pressure actually coming from parents. But just speaking to something that I think it's Esti, mentioned, I was speaking to them, and one of the questions I asked them is, so how do we get prepared, for the industry of tomorrow, as educators? And a lot of them, I think they are on a learning curve because it's going to be a lot of review on the curriculum that has got to happen. And the reality is that we're moving into a digital space, and a lot of them probably weren't prepared for that. So one of the things they're quickly doing is what Esti is saying, to try and acquaint yourself so that as you go to teach, you're also familiar with the new norms that is happening in the market. We're talking about hybrid. This is not a space, a lot of our educators who are familiar with, but they got to do that. But what was very interesting was from a premium training institution here in Kenya called Utalii. I think this was just the right opportunity because what the government has done is that they have instituted a task force to be able to review, I think they are calling it the Task Force on Reform and Re-engineering of the Kenya Utalii College. And what I hear is that is going to provide a lot of opportunity to be able to re-engineer the college in view of what has happened or the process we are going through. So quite an interesting space, I guess, going forward. And let's see how this conversation goes.
Yeah, thanks. We have so little time, but yes, there's so much we could talk about here. One of the things that we've seen on this side of the pond, and that I'm seeing also in Cape Verde, where I also have an office, and that's my link to Africa, is that we have increased number of students because we've got the seasoned, experienced professionals coming back to the university for executive masters, for retraining, for looking at the new things that are happening in the market. And we have, every university has quickly gone to ground with as I say, MBAs, postgraduate courses. I myself have created 3 that are going to start in April, exactly to respond and encourage professionals who have been stopped by the market. And what we find, we've got 10, 14, 15, 20-year professionals, experienced professionals coming back to university. But we have academics, and the postgraduate courses are taught by academics and the market, not just academia. Academia has opened its doors. So Esti, do you see this as a really positive thing? Is it something that you would like to mirror? Is it something that you don't think is valuable? What's your position? And we have about 5 minutes, so we have to be short and sweet.
I'll be quick. So similarly, we've also got the postgraduate diplomas and things like that to meet exactly that demand that you are talking about. And in South African academia is very bureaucratic, and that's often why I believe many of our brain drain happens. Many of our good academics are leaving for less bureaucracy somewhere else maybe, and what they think is better opportunities. Those of us who remain here need to deal with that. And my point is the fact that, there's so much emphasis on academia teaching these postgraduate courses. However, we've managed to do exactly what you've said, to convince the university that let's also get industry experts on board to do certain modules like the health and safety component, which is new. None of us know how to do it, but research can then be spearheaded by the academics. So, and those conversations took a long time to actually then come up with the implementation of a postgraduate, because it was all on paper. Now we're moving over in 2022 to the implementation, and it's getting the correct person on board. And our university doesn't want anybody without a master's to teach. And I mean, I've got experts with 30 years experience. How do I get them in there? So we're still trying and seeing, and it looks positive, but that is our challenge. So the sooner we get our experts in the industry qualified, it seems that's going to be the solution. And hopefully there will be some midway. That's what we are working towards. So yeah, that is a challenge.
And Nelly, we've kind of gone around some of the more bureaucratic things by creating within courses expert masterclasses where we have guest lecturers for a day or something. And because we are also online, it means that our pool of selection is worldwide because we can teach via the internet. How do you see the same thing that I asked Esti, and how do you see the market opening? Bureaucratically, it's complicated, but how do you see the academic market opening?
Thank you, Linda. You know what? We are all regulated by the same policies. As Esti has mentioned, we are very, very tightly regulated by what we refer to as the Council of Higher Education, and we have to adhere to specific criteria. Similarly to what Esti said, yes, you have to have a minimum of a master's qualification in order to be an academic, like myself. I have been a lifelong scholar. I've never worked in the industry for one day, but when I started my academic career, I decided if I want to be an expert in my field, I need to get the practical experience. And that's why I have gone for the CMP accreditation, because you can't be just an academic, because then you will lose contact of what is happening within the industry. In future, I think that we will have an unbundling of our courses. I think in the past, historically, people will enroll, for instance, for a 3-year degree. They will do 360 credits, and then they will exit and have a qualification. I think the student of the future will be more self-directed learning and the unbundling, where I will select from a bouquet of courses on a specific skill that I want to acquire, and I will build on that. Some of the other institutions have been very successful with massive open online courses where they provide these specialized courses. Now, in terms of the legislation in South Africa, we still have a very long way to go, but I see this unbundling will start to happen. There, the professionalization will need to come in, and hopefully there we can pull in our various experts. I, for instance, need to revise our business tourism curriculum this year again, and I am already looking at the industry experts, because I cannot do all of these all by myself. As Esti mentioned, health and safety. In my curriculum, I tell my students, I am not a healthy and safe specialist. If you want to organize an event, ensure that you bring in the specialist, because you can't be a jack of all trades, master of none. So I think skill specialization will become more evident. Just to touch also on the brain drain here in Africa, as you said, it appears that many professionals came back to academia. I think this brings a richness of content, but furthermore, we've also seen that many academia are leaving the African continent, which is a great concern. Now, why are this happening? And I'm working with African scholars who are sitting in Europe, and who are sitting in Australia, and who are sitting in Africa. And then I ask himself, but why did you leave the continent? And first of all, it is about availability of resources, because resources are still limited on the continent, and it's about access. It's very easy to attend an academic or an association conference somewhere in Europe or in America, but in Africa, traveling, and I hope later on in the webinar they will touch on that, is still very inaccessible. And these are all external factors that also has an impact on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nelly. Nicanor, just and again here we have to be a little bit short. I apologize, but how do you, from the professional side, see academia responding? Because I know that Kenya has been quite quick, and that you've had a sensitive government to this issue. Do you see academia answering your immediate needs or your needs for the near future, for the professional side? Because I do find, exactly as Esti and Nelly said, I do find that I'm getting a lot more African professors contacting me for positions in Europe, and that worries me, because it means they're leaving their place. But I'm also getting a lot of professionals wanting to come into other parts of the world to work. Do you think that academia is responding to the market needs?
Linda, you know, it's an interesting question, because I think this probably differs from country to country. But definitely we see a lot of catch up, you know, from the academia, you know, into the practice world, and we wish it could be a little bit faster. But at the same time, we have some very good collaboration and working experience, you know, between the academia and the practitioner here in Kenya. And one of the things that we hear in our conversation is that we want to see how do we upscale our skills to be able to catch up with what is happening now. You know, so there's demand, you know, for areas of specialization such as communication and event design, because clearly, you know, the event of tomorrow has clearly shown that we have to find a way that we merge, you know, the design, because it's all about digital, it's all about online. So you're talking about hybrid. There are those new skills that require, you know, design and the look of what the event looks like on the screen. So that needs to be upscaled. We've also hearing that there is need to strengthen, you know, the skills around project management. Because to turn around now on digital events and on online events and working with people that are actually across the continent will demand quite some highly specialized project management skills that we need to be able to update, you know, our practitioners, so that we can do that in response to that. But also much more importantly is how do we upscale our research skills? Because if there's anything that this COVID has shown us is that prompt, quick research in terms of how do you respond to the need of a client is very essential. So how do we leverage, you know, digital tech to be able to upgrade, you know, and our research skills? And we think that the people that will provide that answer will be our friends in the academia.
Okay, I agree with you. I think that we're all playing catch up, not just academia, the market also. It is really fundamental that both the market and academia quickly change their mindset, and it becomes a question of consensus, of meeting in the middle. We all need help. It's not just our clients, the market, etc. It's not all about digital, but it's all about digital. We have to learn how to maneuver. We've gone from event organizers to film producers. We have to learn how to do it properly, but we also have to have prepared students that can come in and start running straight away. This philosophical and intellectual attitude has to go out of the window as soon as possible and get people running. Thank you so much for your insights. We could have done an hour on this topic. There's so much more to say. Thank you, guys. You were brilliant. John, I'm going back to you. I hope that Tess is back. If she's not, I don't know how I can help.
Yeah, no, it's fine. What we're going to do, Tess is sort of in and out. She's just trying to get everything sorted. There's some power issues down there in South Africa. But what we're going to do is I'll run the session that we're going to do. Potentially, we'll maybe come back to you, Linda, or Padraig's very kindly offered to run the PCO session. So let's give Tess the maximum amount of time possible. So what we're going to do now, in slight change to the section, the schedule is actually talk about African aviation. So for this, I would like to welcome my good friend and colleague, Sean Mendes, to the stage. For those of you who don't know me, my name's John Howell. I'm the CEO and founder of Aviation Africa. We're a platform dedicated to improving air connectivity within the continent, something that was alluded to there about getting around, and is definitely something that's going to help us recover. So we thought it was very kind of Tess to think of us and to invite us onto the stage. But what we want to talk about today is obviously skills development and how to avoid losing people from the industry. So Sean is joining us from Malawi today. And despite his very youthful appearance, he's got lots of experience in the aviation industry. Sean, for those of you who don't know him, was the immediate past Chief Operations Officer of Africa World Airlines, which is an airline based in Ghana. He worked there over the last couple of years, but he was also there involved in the startup back in 2010. It's a very successful regional airline and domestic airline there in Ghana. His career in aviation management spans many different countries. He's worked in passenger cargo side, ground handling, jet fuel, airport management. So really has a sort of plethora of experience, and has actually successfully started up African Airlines, which is, there's a lot of people who've started up African Airlines and not so many who've done it successfully. So Sean, welcome. Thank you for joining us first and foremost. The way I see it is there's broadly two buckets of individuals in our industry. There are the next generation who are thinking about a career in aviation or some form of supply industry to the aviation. And the other one are the people who've lost their jobs due to the pandemic. You know, I think that we were one of the industries, just like incentive travel, tourism, hotels, we were hit so hard and so fast because the demand just dropped, obviously, when borders were closed. So for those who've been laid off, how do you see their prospects and what are they telling you in terms of, are they trying to hold on to what they've got? Are they doing something in the interim, or have they fully moved career?
Thanks for having me, John. That's an interesting question you ask. And I think the answer to that is actually different depending upon what specific role the people have. I think a lot of people in very highly skilled aviation roles, such as pilots and engineers, have invested in some cases over $100,000 in their training and their career choice, don't really have the luxury of just simply pivoting away to a different industry and abandoning, the years of training, the money spent on training and so forth. I think a lot of those people are looking at interim options. However, there are a lot of other people who have skills that they've developed in aviation, which do pivot well. I mean, people, frontline personnel in customer service and so forth, those have the ability to pivot away. But at the same time, that also creates the opportunity that when things recover, people from the other industries can pivot into aviation. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Certainly, there is a shrinking amount of opportunity in aviation right now, but it will recover. And I think that is where you need to, things are actually in a very good position for the next generation, because there are people leaving the industry and because there is going to be a bounce back, whether it is this year or next year, or whenever else. The opportunities are actually going to be more numerous than they would have been without the pandemic. So if you're a youngster and you're looking at going into flight training and so forth, and you're looking at coming out and looking for a job in a year or two, this is the best time to get into it, because in a year or two's time is the time where the opportunities from new businesses opening up, from businesses beginning to recover to pre-pandemic levels, those are going to be available for you in the aviation sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess the question is, what do people do now? Because you and I know so many that have, they're just in this hiatus where they're saying, well, yeah, everybody's telling me it's coming back. They keep moving the horizon further and further. So, what can we do right now to avoid that leakage? Or do we just have to say, look, guys, we know you've got to make a living, off you go, do what you want to do, and then come back? Because this is a question that obviously is going to be asked across all the sectors that we cover today.
No, and you're absolutely right. And, the uncertainty, I think, is what is largely creating the state of limbo for the people who have to make these career decisions. I know it's very easy for us to say, wait it out for a year or so, but waiting out for a year or so doesn't put food on the table. So I think many African, I think it was alluded to earlier, that Africa has actually, although it has been hit in the early stages of the pandemic, I think Africa has bounced back due to pragmatism. I think African governments were forced to take a more pragmatic approach to the pandemic in general. They've had to open up borders using a testing regime, which has proven to be actually very successful relative to quarantines and elsewhere. When you look at the balance between health and economics on the other side. So I think the African aviation will actually have lost a lot less personnel than the global average would, so to speak. However, on the flip side, I think that African aviation also had a shortage of skills to begin with. So the people who have been forced to exit the industry are actually going to make the shortage of skills for the recovery potentially more acute. And I think that's why a lot of African airlines in particular have tried very hard to keep their staff on in some ways. I know from our perspective, when in Ghana, when we at Africa World Airlines, when the pandemic first hit, our initial points were, okay, if this is going to be for a few months, let's double down on training. So we focused on local Ghanaian first officers. We tried to accelerate them up for training into becoming captains. We tried to upgrade junior cabin crew to pursers and so forth. And, with the additional time you have, with the less production that you're putting out there, you have the opportunity to focus on developing your personnel. And hopefully, again, that might be something that indigenizes the industry more, because I think there's no shortage of young Africans who want to work in the industry. There is a shortage of young Africans with the experience to work in the industry. And that sometimes makes it a bit more reliant on expatriates. So I think if the successful airlines, the airlines which have the right reserves, and in fact, anyone in the aviation industry who is looking at a long term and has the ability to invest for the long term, would use this time frame to invest in the personnel, in training and experience building and things as such.
Yeah, wonderful. Right. So I've got two more questions for you. The first one is we've seen the numbers for pre-pandemic about there are going to be skills shortages in terms of pilots. You can't get enough pilots, mechanics. Where do you see those shortages being an issue operationally? Like it takes time to be qualified as a pilot and to be a quality mechanic. And if these people are saying, oh, I'm not sure that this is really the right way, and how long is it going to take me, and am I going to fall through the gaps? Where do you see that the shortages could be? And if we do have a shortage, what's that going to mean to the recovery of aviation generally, but obviously in Africa and all the industries that we support?
Actually, I think in Africa, as I mentioned earlier, but I'll elaborate a bit more, I think that this will actually, in the long run, turn out to be an advantage, because where there has been, the market was growing far faster than the pipeline of training was producing the new pilots, producing the new engineers. This pause in the market growth for a year and a half, or even maybe 2 years, is actually going to allow a bit more of catch up, where, as you said, you can't train a pilot overnight. So people who are going to be the pilots of next year started training a year and a half ago. And those people now are going to come into a market where the demand is at the same level as it was in 2019. But there is a larger supply now of these youngsters coming in, as well as the original pool of people, for the most part, who were there. So I think Africa is different. Certainly in the US and in Europe and so forth, there are a lot of pilots who are looking at a 5-year desert of where they're going to have to find another way to put food on the table. But I think in Africa, this is actually going to be a positive in terms of the opportunities that the post-pandemic growth is going to present to the youth and to people looking to develop their skills in the industry.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. So last question, and I've been inspired by that first panel, which was brilliant, by the way, everybody that was on that first panel. And I wanted to get the kind of other side of this, because we had some of the, obviously Nicanor is a practitioner, but we had the lecturers. From an aviation perspective, just to educate people out there, aviation management degrees, most of which that I don't believe you can actually study for one in the African continent. So there are a lot of African students that I speak to. I give guest lectures in the UK. Obviously, again, that was easy enough. I'm based here, but now it's really easy with Zoom, etc. You can learn aviation management in the US, in the Middle East, but really there's a bit of a lack there. But my question to you, Sean, is: have you been approached by these guys, because you've got so much experience, to deliver a lecture? But the second part to this, which I think is an important conversation to have, is what's that relationship like? Because I'll give you my personal experiences. It's almost like I'm doing them a favor, vice versa. So it's not really a commercialized thing. Universities make money, and then they say, hey, would you like to come and do a 3-hour lecture, which is going to take loads of effort, and you might get a sandwich in the cafe, But if you commercialize that relationship, and I just think like it's a bit of a hand grenade of a conversation to an extent, but I do think it's important to say, well, we really value you, so we're going to actually pay you what you're worth because you are an industry expert. You're going to bring something we can't bring. Like, how's your experience with this? Do you give guest lectures? You don't have to name names, obviously, but you know, how do you feel about it?
Let me just.
Esty wants to jump in. Go on.
No, my apologies. I'm so sorry.
Oh, right. Okay, don't worry. Go on. Go on,
okay. Sean. No, certainly I have. I've tried to make the time to participate in some of these academia-related events where possible. You know, with aviation clubs, with guest lectures, and things like that, helping a lot of people with their dissertations and so forth. But you know, you are right to that extent. I think that the links between academia and industry in the aviation sector are poor, and especially in Africa, where, as you mentioned, a lot of the Africans who want to actually train to become globalized players in aviation have to largely look outside of Africa to be able to attain those skills. As you mentioned, aviation management, there may be some small programs, but there isn't a globally recognized or global standard program which exists for that. Most African countries don't have flight schools. If you want to become a pilot, you know, there's a few pockets of flight schools, South Africa, maybe Kenya, and a couple other places. But for the most part, if you want to become a pilot or an engineer or similar in Africa, you have to go abroad to be able to attain these skills. And I think definitely, you know, you've seen Ethiopian Airlines invest very heavily in their Ethiopian Training Academy, which is now a world-class, you know, training academy for soft skills, for hard skills in the aviation sector. And I think definitely there will be benefits to both industry in terms of being able to identify youngsters who are coming up, promising ones, to be able to mentor them and then take them on for their own benefit, as well as for the youngsters who will get the opportunities to be able to interact more with industry during their academic careers, and you know, potentially make their careers either in industry or academia with a lot better rounded effort, as was, you know, the previous panel very succinctly put forward, is a gap that seems to be missing both in their sector as well as in the aviation side.
Fantastic. Right. Well, I think that's all we got time for, but thanks for giving us a bit of an insight and some thoughts. It's given me a bit of food for thought as well. And this is such an important topic across the sections. Now, I believe, thank you, Sean, for joining us. I believe Tess might well be back with us now. So let's see whether you can start your video, Tess, and then take over. Are you there? I can see you there. Here she is. Okay, fantastic. Can you hear us, Tess? You're on mute, but you're on your phone, I see.
Off. Hi, can everybody hear me?
We got you.
Great, yeah. So sorry about this. Nothing like a bit of a power challenge here in Cape Town. Thank you so much for jumping in, John and Linda. Sorry about the delay. I am back here with you guys, and I am going to call on the PCOs and DMCs. I hope I've got the program right in the right order, John. I'd like to introduce Daryl Keywood from Walters Tours in South Africa, as well as Mulemwa Mungwa from Zambia, a PCO and MICE expert. And then, of course, Yoaden Talahun from Ethiopia from Flawless Events, a PCO based in East Africa, but operating all over Africa. So my question to all of you is, you know, facing the challenges in Africa, and as Padraig pointed out earlier, our challenges are very different to the rest of the world. In fact, I really love the positives that I've picked up coming out so far. But I think I'd like to start with Yoaden. And if you can give us an overview of what's your landscape like in Ethiopia, and do you think our industry is in danger of collapsing if business does not return soon? Yoaden?
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can. Oh, your sound has gone off again, Jordan.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay. You know, as PCOs, we heavily rely on the services that we're able to offer. And I think, you know, some of us are financially a little better off than others, so we might be able to survive for a little bit longer. But if this continues, of course, it's going to be extremely dangerous to keep our industry alive. For us here in Ethiopia, more specifically, and maybe we can be a bit of a purview for the rest of the continent, we've kind of been back doing events since, I'd say about July, August, but definitely since September. It's almost like all events have picked up. So you have your social events such as the weddings and the other social events, but government events, conferences, special inaugurations and so forth have also picked up. And it's interesting how we quickly have gone back to the way things were. So there are some precautions that are taken for COVID, but outside of that, it's the rhythm has kind of picked up and things have kind of gone back to normal to a certain degree. So we might be paying the price of having returned to a bit of normalcy a little bit earlier than we should have, as we're seeing our numbers increasing, while the rest of the world may be taking or may having better control over it. Vaccine just started this past weekend, so we're a long way from vaccinating 100 million people. But definitely, at least for us, it's helped us sustain, and we're kind of bouncing back from the beginning of last year where COVID had kind of decimated our services. Our clientele base has shifted from being international to mainly local, and we've also had to diversify the kind of services we're offering. But it's just interesting to see that for all the different preparations and fear that we had, when business picked up, it just kind of went back to normal.
That is absolutely positive, Johan, and thank you for that. Now, down in South Africa, the picture is very different. And Daryl, you can speak to that firsthand, where we sort of started reopening, you know, for business events towards the end of last year, and then effectively got smacked in the chops just after Christmas, where we had to go into a new lockdown. At this stage, we're permitted to go up to 100 people indoors. But there are still so many other challenges. I mean, looking at how it's affected your personal team and how it's potentially affected service levels across the sector, what are your experiences?
Hi, thanks, Tess. Yes, I think those of us that have interacted a little bit outside of the formal kind of zone are aware that, you know, South Africa locked down very strongly initially. For some of us, the most difficult was obviously the business, and for other people, the fact that they couldn't buy alcohol for weeks and weeks on end. The jokes aside, I think it was the right decision to take a very, very strict approach. We're seeing it today and reaping the rewards. Unlike some countries in Africa, we declined very fast. Our second wave is, you know, almost at the bottom. We have, as of this morning, 24,000 infections in total on the government counts on the official website. The impact has been hard though, and I think a lot of the uncertainty about when we could restart, and as Tess indicated, we kind of had a stop-start, things opened up and then closed down again approach. Has meant not only for our international business, but even local corporates, they're very hesitant to commit to actually planning any events. So we know it's going to take time for long-haul incentive travel to return to our destination. But we're also seeing a very slow uptick from the local business, which should be sustaining the industry. And I don't want to take up too much time, but you know, just personally from our own company, we've had people on short time. We've had to let some staff go, which is unfortunate. And as things return to normal, my big concern is that the skills we need, not in the long term, because when there's a gap in the market, it will be filled. But initially, as we into the restart, that we already know coach companies have gone out of business. Excuse the hardy-dar birds if you can hear them in the background. And we've got a lot of staff and people in our industry that have a side hustle. It's a great term that has been coined recently, where they're doing more than one job because they're only working a day or two a week and they need income. And they're finding that perhaps there are other careers out there that may, in the short term, pay better or have more job security in future. And I do have a real concern that we're gonna have a few challenges as we kickstart our industry again. It is looking better. The inquiries have picked up a lot, but we're gonna go through another 6 to 9 months of uncertainty, and I think some challenges with service delivery, with skills. Practically we can postpone an event, but will the airlift be there for that domestic connection? We do many two-center incentive programs. And, we may not just be able to fly people from A to B to a specific safari lodge region, for example, when we postpone an event by a year. So, yeah, it's a cautiously optimistic message from me, in that I think we're on the right track. The road to recovery is there, but there are a few roadblocks that do raise concerns.
Thank you, Daryl. It's always nice. I'm picking up a lot of positives in spite of the doom and gloom that we've got around us. So one of the things you've touched on, from a skill set, we'll probably have to rely heavily on freelancers. But now, as business come back, but now we are sitting in a situation where most of us have not run a program for an entire year now. You know what? We fall out of practice. So should we be looking at solutions to, let's compare it to a reservist army? We may not be at war, but what are we doing to keep our skills honed? Are there any opportunities to keep people up to date and in practice? What are your thoughts?
Back to me, Tess. I don't want to hog.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. There's a lot of resource out there because a lot of people are out of work or only working part-time. So there are experienced people out there. I do think that there will be people that will retire, leave the industry, close their businesses. And for me, the concern is that the gap is normally filled in our hospitality industry by people coming through our academic institutions. In hospitality, normally 6 months of that would be a practical immersion, actually going and doing some in-service experience in the hotel environment, chefs, that kind of thing. And just talking to people and family, friends and others in the industry, we've got an 18-month kind of hiatus. People have not been able to do that practical training. And although we're sitting with a pool of experienced industry people, I think that we're going to have a lag because no new recruits are coming into our industry. And I'm not sure that they're going to balance in the short term. But yes, we will be leaning on that reservist army, no doubt, should we have large events in the next year, because I don't think that businesses can upscale or commit to permanently hiring another 10 event managers on a long-term basis. I think you're going to see a lot more contract positions available, a lot more freelancing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Daryl. Now I'd like to move over to Mulemwa in Zambia. I think very different picture on your side as well, because obviously South Africa's lockdowns has impacted directly on the Southern African countries. So what is your take on your industry over there?
Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of the other Africa, as was indicated in the presentation. So Zambia is a unique destination in that we have the Victoria Falls that pretty much sells itself. So you find that we have a combination of leisure and business travelers simply because we've been a hub for meetings, and then also we've got the fauna and flora for those that are coming in for the leisure business. Now, for me personally, I think for the last maybe 8 months or so, I've been in touch with you personally, Tess, because I've realized that the survival of this industry is actually dependent on us that are in it, because its survival really is not priority for other players in national development, if we're being honest. So we have not leveraged our numbers enough in terms of our people, in terms of our professionals in the industry. We've been we were working in a comfort zone pre-COVID. So you will be in South Africa, you get the calls, you get the business. Now, what we need to basically accept is that our source markets are not coming back anytime soon, because they're going to be in recovery. Africa needs to start learning how we're going to basically work with what we have. We need to start planning to recover from within. So having said that, from a practitioner's point of view, rather than focusing on the retention, I'm actually worried about the attraction. I don't know how many people on this call actually left high school and were, I'm going to be a PCO. I think most PCOs, we actually ended up in this space by accident or as something that we've evolved into. It was never a cautious decision with your parents. And for me, that is the key in how we are going to retain the skills. Because if we don't work towards attracting the talent first, it means that it'll be very easy, because people just happen to be in this industry. So to keep them in, to attract them, to say, look, let's wait this out. It's like they're out the first minute. So there's going to be this core backbone of the industry that stays the course. But now it is when we start the recovery, we are looking at the numbers that used to come to us. Business may not, I was one of those that said we'll recover within 3 years. That was me being very optimistic. But the truth is that if we don't look at our human factor and looking at it not from the perspective of only at country level, but at continental level, what does our human capital look like? What does our human capital development plan look like? The reason that you find that Professor Nelly is struggling with the conversations of the requirement for a master's, the industry standard for the industry that I'm practicing in, when they send out a request for proposal, if it's an international event, they will ask for a certified meetings professional. They won't ask for a master's in meetings management, because I think, to the best of my knowledge, the master's is something that is maybe emerging 5 years at the most. So it's going to be very difficult for us, and industry and academia need to have a conversation. What is going to be the standard that we agree? And these standards have to be at continental level. If I'm going to have a meeting in Namibia, if I'm going to have a meeting in Nairobi, if I'm having a meeting in Nigeria, there should be an expectation of minimum standards. And at the moment, we don't have that. I don't know how much time I have, but Nikano, I think, is coming from an associations movement. Previously, we were dependent on associations coming to Africa. In recovery, we need to look at the associations that are in continent, and we need to start moving them, because that's the only way this industry is going to recover. Each destination, we've been operating as 54 different destinations. We now need to look at how do we start planning to move these, and who are these associations, whether it's sporting, whether it's professional bodies, whether it's business associations. How are we going to start moving them? But we need the skills in each of our destinations that are going to standardize the activities that we host.
Right, thank you, Malema. Very, very good point indeed. So it definitely seems that there are opportunities, and I do agree with what you started by saying is most of us ended up in this industry by accident. And certainly in the time that I started in this industry, there was no event management training. There was no incentive travel training. We had to learn it on the fly, you know, and I do indeed miss the old-fashioned on-the-job training, the vocational training. And I think our industry desperately lacks that. There's nothing more valuable than hands-on experience, especially from an event management point of view. And you know, when we talk incentive travel, I always say that incentive travel or incentive trip is really event management on steroids, because every aspect of an incentive program is an event. But for the sake of time, my power, thank goodness, has just come back on. I cannot see the questions, John. So are there any questions or comments from the audience that you'd like to redirect to our panel? And while you do that, please give me a moment. Let me just get back online on my laptop so I can get rid of this cramp in my right arm from holding my phone.
No, Tess, there's nothing specific on the Q&A at the moment. We're losing you now. Oh, you're down. You're down.
All right.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute Tess, but it won't let me.
Sounds like a piano.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say, because I saw a couple of comments. Look, when you go back into the industry,
Jordan, what is your perspective? Sorry, John. Oh, there we go.
Hey, Tess, sorry, we did not hear anything you said as you were transitioning out.
Okay, sorry, I'm a bit confused. I can't really see what's happening.
Yeah, we can see you. Okay, I just wanted to say, you know, as we go back into the rhythm of practicing, definitely we are a bit rusty, and you know, it feels a little bit weird to get back into the rhythm, but it's definitely easy to do so. Just responding to some of the comments that came in, but I also want to say, you know, from the same way that the survey had said at the beginning, what the research had found, we're also finding ourselves hiring slightly different type of skill sets. So we are looking into digital marketers, we are looking into comms experts and so forth, because as we move not necessarily into a fully virtual, but even if you do a hybrid, you know, it's really important to figure out where is it that we're adding value to our clients. And as we do that, we realize that we need a lot more digital skills as part of the team. So even though some of the areas in hospitality it's like, you know, as one area dies down, another one comes up. So I am seeing a lot more demand for young experts, the youth, especially because they're the ones who are a lot more comfortable in the digital sphere, and having to bring them on board and, you know, maximizing what they can bring to the table, and then marrying that with the expertise that we have in the event space, and finding a way to remarket ourselves and position ourselves to our clients. So you know, like any industry, I think we're going through that, you know, up and down phase, but it's also understanding what is out there, what do our clients need, and what kind of skills do we need to bring into our company to serve them accordingly. So it's not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. You know, that also raises the question for the older people in the industry. We not all that tech savvy. So do we have to step aside and make room for the new tech savvy youngsters in the industry? Or is there an opportunity for us old folks to brush up our techno skills, which is really critical and essential in this day and age? But, you know, to that end, and for the sake of time, I'm going to thank our panel. Jordan, Molemwa, Daryl, thank you so much. And I'd like to switch over to our hotel experts. if I may introduce Dino Urbani, who is the Regional Director for Mantis Hotels in East Africa, and then HP or Hans-Peter Morensky, who's the Operations Director for AHA Hotels and Safaris. So here we are looking at an East African as well as a Southern African aspect of our industry. And having listened to all the comments from the PCOs and the DMCs and indeed the educators, Dino, can we start with you? How has COVID impacted on your operations, and what are the challenges when it comes to staffing and skilling? If you can give us an overview, please.
Okay, thank you, Tess. Yeah, look, as far as Rwanda is concerned, and that's where I'm based, I look after Rwanda, DRC, and Uganda. And we've got 3 operational hotels currently in Rwanda. So I can refer back to those 3 hotels and the impact that happened to those 3 hotels. Obviously, when the COVID hit last year, we went into a force majeure situation. We had to close down all 3 hotels. It was very difficult for the one property because it only had been open for 2 weeks, a brand new property, and then we had to shut it down. So that was a bit of a challenge. We closed the 3 hotels down for three months while we were assessing. Then we brought the staff back, and we had to retrench quite a few. About 35% of the staff were retrenched. The rest of the staff came back, and we put them onto a COVID salary. Then we monitored, so that was around about May, June. We started relooking at opening the hotels. Things started, depending which hotel it was. One of our properties, it's in the reserve, in the game reserve called Akagera. That's reliant, 80% of the business is reliant on international tourists. They came to a standstill. So that hotel battled. The other 2 properties, one was brand new, so never really established a market as yet, but it's got a very big conference facility, so we were hoping to pick up some business there. And the 3rd hotel, which is the eastern province of Rwanda, they get a lot of government business, especially conferencing, and they tended to pick up quite quickly because there were still people in Rwanda that were conferencing, especially government. Small conferences, obviously Rwanda is very strict with the COVID laws and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And for the past, well, we ended the year quite well in December, but we started 2021 not great. Okay, now we're heading towards June 21st is Chogam for the Commonwealth. Everything is gearing up for Chogam, and we're hoping that things improve. The second quarter of this year, we believe, will pick up. Rwanda's been very proactive with the COVID. They've taken steps right from the very beginning. There's 270,000 people already vaccinated in Rwanda. I've been one of them. So, and that brought down the cases, the daily cases, and there's been hardly any deaths from COVID in Rwanda. It's been very strict, in Rwanda. When you fly in, you get tested at the airport, you get a PCR test, and you go into a quarantine hotel for 24 hours. You wait for your results. If your results come back negative, you can go and do your thing. And then you've got to be tested again before you leave Rwanda. So they've been extremely strict as far as the COVID situation is concerned. And that's added a lot of value to business and also what people think of Rwanda and wanting to come into Rwanda. So from that point, I think we head in the second quarter, because of Chogam in Rwanda, we head in the right direction. I can't see us getting back to 2019 before 2023, but I do believe we're heading in the right direction. We're not going backwards now, we're going forward. And it's going to be a gradual incline until we reach 2019's business.
Well, thanks for that perspective, Dino. In terms of your staffing, you mentioned that you've lost about 35% of your staff, and now you're building up towards the games in June. Are you re-employing staff? Are you redeploying staff? How are you managing the skills that then needs to lead to service delivery for potentially 100% occupancies?
Well, you know, the skill levels in Rwanda are not great as far as hospitality is concerned. And that's where we as mentors, we want to start developing the staff. So what we will do, the staff that we let off are going to be the first staff we're going to bring back when staff are needed. So we have done training with them to a certain extent. And we train continuously with the staff. So yes, it's going to be a challenge when the time comes for us to employ more staff as occupancies increase. But you know, we will deal with it as time comes along. There's plenty people out there looking for work. Most of our staff that we let go are unemployed still, so we can call on them to come back. So I don't see it being too much of a problem when the time comes for us to start re-employing.
Great. Thanks for that. HP, let's bounce across to you. I've been speaking to some of my groups of people, sales managers and, you know, across the board. So some of them are cleaning hotel rooms, some of them are serving breakfast, multitasking as they go along. Now, in terms of your hotels, which are mostly South and Southern African, what has your experience been in terms of service levels versus occupancies and those challenges?
Thanks very much, Tess, and thanks for the opportunity to be part of this today. Just to elaborate on what my colleague has mentioned there, you know,
it seems HP has also just gone into load shedding. Oh dear. John, can you pick up anything on that side?
No, he just seems to have disappeared, I'm afraid.
I'll send him a quick message. Dino, did you want to expand any further while we try and get Dino back? Oh, sorry, HP.
Look, I can only talk about when I say East Africa, I'm talking about Rwanda specifically, and I think that it's positive. We've got to look at the positive side. I think it's heading in the right direction. I know that Uganda, which is on our border, and we're actually busy with a new project there now, and things are starting to improve in Kampala with occupancies in the hotels. So I think, you know, Africa, especially this part of Africa, people can't be out of work for too long. You know, majority of people live hand to mouth. So, you know, we got to start, or we've started already in putting measures in place where people can make a living. So I believe from the hospitality perspective, it's definitely on the up. Okay. As far as you were asking the question earlier about standards and services in the hotels, of course, with the limited amount of staff that we have now, we lost about plus minus 35% of our staff. It means that the staff are going to do extra work. So there's cross training. People are helping one. Okay, there we are.
Right. Thank you, HP. Welcome back.
That was our chance to get onto the load shedding, and our generator is a bit of a manual cutover. Sorry about that.
All good.
Yes, so like you were saying, you know, those draconian style lockdown regulations certainly put our industry in stress. Looking at your market segmentation, you know, throughout the Game Lodge portfolio, it's predominantly reliant on your international tourists. So we've seen some real hemorrhaging in terms of business there. Coming to the skills test, you know, and it's so disheartening to hear people saying that there's just, you know, there's just so many hotel staff, hospitality staff, people that are currently unemployed. And I mean, even some, you know, affluent hotel companies out there are making comments at the moment that, you know, you don't necessarily have to pay the salaries because you can pick up skill for almost next to nothing. And that's certainly not something we want to hear in our industry. Already we've seen a bit of a skills exodus over the last, specifically in food and beverage. I mean, I'm a foodie at heart, and if you see the skills coming through in kitchen and food and beverage and in restaurants, it's already quite dire. So hopefully this perception of a saturated market where we can pick up skill for next to nothing is going to change quite quickly, because I fear we might lose even more skill with an attitude like that. Coming across to your multi-skilling, absolutely. You know, we've had to align our businesses. As mentioned previously, we've also unfortunately had to go through Section 189 or retrenchment processes where we've lost between 35 to 50% of our staff in some hotels. When you're factoring your retrenchment criteria, you really are faced with quite a dilemma. You're either going to sacrifice your experience by letting go of your older people first, or you might, you know, sacrifice some of your new innovation and your dynamic youth, your tech savvy guys, by going, you know, if you're looking at the reverse of that process. But either way, we've lost a significant amount of skill. And I think what also needs to be touched on, Tess, is the enormous pressure this has put on our leadership teams. You know, I was a general manager for many years. I've had the privilege of being a GM throughout South Africa, in my favorite home away from home, Zambia. And the pressure that general managers are under at the moment, as well as their heads of department, in terms of multi-skilling, in terms of trying to pull a proverbial rabbit out of a hat to get the delivery across the line, it's an enormous task in itself. I mean, we're a business, as you know, that has significant fixed costs. You know, even if we had to close our doors, it would still hemorrhage. It's like an agent or an operator, if they close their doors, they might not suffer any further losses. But we have rates and taxes to pay, we have bonds to pay,
Oh, unfortunate that we've lost HB again. Excuse me. Linda, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to give us a perspective from Cabo Verde?
Yes, I can actually give you some examples. What we're doing is regards skills in the hotel sector and the staff, because agreements were entered into in 2020 between the international hotel groups, not the local groups, the international hotel groups and government, whereby the opportunity was taken to upskill and reskill the hotel staff, but also to try and spread the sadness across the sector. And although people received a minimal compensation, they were not actually fired. They didn't lose their jobs. And the international groups, in an amazing, startling attitude of solidarity, actually support the local hotel staff as well, so that we created this capacity for people to receive some sort of minimal wage. It doesn't mean we haven't lost staff, but we've been able to keep the vast majority of staff on standby, because, you know, Cabo Verde are islands, so without international tourism, everything dies. So it's been an act of solidarity and social responsibility from the major hotel groups, international groups, and from the government as well, and the hotel school. Everybody got together, and between retraining and keeping minimal services going, etc., it has worked out really well. So we've been able to retain experienced staff. We've been able to reskill younger people and bring them back into the hotel school, and then do training in the hotels that are closed, most of them, of course. And it has worked quite well. So I think it's something that we could look at in other places to try and implement, because it has worked well in Cabo Verde.
Thank you, Linda. That's great. And I really think it's important. Maybe we need to have another discussion on exactly this. Another topic that we don't have time to go into now is the opportunity for Pan-African, intra-African business. You know, since so many other parts of the world are still restricted with travel and all these good things, what can we do to help each other across borders, and not just, you know, within our backyards. So I'm also very grateful that HP raised the point of the pressure that there is on the management and the leadership teams. You know, I think for some of us who would, you know, gloriously get a new inquiry, we're going to have to deal with the fact that it's going to take longer to get a response. You know, it's not because they don't want to, because they're lazy. We now have to realize that most of these people are working from home. They don't necessarily have their management structures, you know, at the desk next door. So there are many things to consider. PJ, oh, sorry, HP, I see you are back. Do you want to complete your sentence before we move on? Thank you.
Jess, I really just wanted to end on something positive by saying that, you know, if anything, this pandemic has made us really analyze our business from head to toe, and that although we might only see F18, F19 numbers again in 2023, by that time we'll certainly be running a lot more profitable businesses, for lack of a better word, because we've had no choice but to actually comb through our income statements and scrutinize all our financials and make sure that we can be as cost efficient as humanly possible.
Absolutely.
So
that's great. That's great. Good to know. Well, thank you so much, HP. And thank you, Dina. And thank you also, Linda. Linda, on that note, let me hand over back to you. You are going to have a chat to some of our convention bureaus and tourism authorities. Thank you.
Hello, I'm hoping that I've got all my people here. I can see Frank has been here for ages. Oh, Jack, thank you, Jack, for joining us. But I have two of my panelists only, but you know, they're brilliant. So they'll be way sufficient for our 20-minute discussion. Hello, guys. Welcome, Jack, and welcome, Frank. Good morning. From my side, it's good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Linda.
Thank you. So I've got Frank. Hold on a second. I've got my for a moment I got a shock and I was worried that my electricity was going, but it's not. My electricity is fine. So I've got Frank Moroanga. He's the director of the Rwanda Convention Bureau, and I've got Jack Stoltz, who's the director of tourism, the Western Cape Department, Economic Development and Tourism. Thank you very much for joining us today. And because we only have 20 minutes and we have to be really, really, really quick, I've noticed and I've been working very closely with convention bureaus, not only across Europe, but in South America and in other destinations where they have become extremely involved, not only in what their potential local partners are doing, like the DMCs and the PCOs and the association management companies, but with the associations and the clients in kind of gathering and bringing them together and making sure that there's continuous communication. The destinations are just as impacted as everybody else. So I'm thinking that I will ask each of you in turn to kind of go to our question of today for a couple of minutes. So what role can tourism authorities and CVBs play in helping skill retention and development during the post-COVID-19? Because there will be need for people to be motivated to continue working in this sector. It has been a tough time. So as leaders and as unifying entities, what role could you perhaps play? If you don't mind, Jacques, I'll go first to Frank, yes?
Yes, no problem.
Frank.
Okay. Thank you so much and good afternoon, everyone. Very delighted to be here. And Linda, very, very pertinent question, especially at this time where we're looking at hopefully to recover from the pandemic in the near future. And essentially, really, the role of the convention bureaus is to be a central coordinating body that will bring all the private and the different stakeholders in the industry to come together and get ready to host events, to host incentive travel programs, and be able to really drive the industry. And so for me, I see this as a very key position, especially given where we are, that our entire industry has been off for more than an hour. And now moving forward, we need to really get ready to bounce back. Whenever time allows, we need to get back, we need to get ready. And how do we get ready? Really, it goes down to everyone involved in the incentive travel business, but also in the tourism industry in general. And I see this as one of the biggest challenges, especially where Africa is in terms of developing the tourism and the business events industry. A lot of people, as the previous speakers mentioned, went to the industry not really by choice, but because they found themselves really working in the industry. So there was no really prior training given to them. There was no induction given to them. And we found ourselves really working in the industry. And so this has continued to hamper the skills and the quality of what we deliver to our visitors, to our meetings, to our incentive travelers. And I think this is a critical time where we can even start with the basic things. If we're talking about putting together a program for a big group that is coming for an incentive trip, what are the basics? What do hotels need to understand and expect? What do DMCs need to, the basic knowledge that we need to have in place for them to function and they perform? I think we have a key role from CVB and the destination's point of view to ensure that we drive the entire destination, key stakeholders on board, and ensure that we engage. Previous speakers also talked about engagement with the training institutions. How often do we go back to the training institutions and tell them these are the demands, these are the challenges we have? How can we work together to ensure that we develop the program tailor-made to what they? I feel really we have a strong role to ensure that we drive the industry. And I'll just give an example of what Rwanda Convention Bureau did in December last year. Given the situation we're all in, we put together a training for our local DMCs and the incentive houses. And it was very much welcoming to our industry in the sense that we were still at home, but we used the time that we have to ensure that we get ready, we keep our members, with even just some of the basic knowledge to ensure that when we get back, our incentive industry is able to pick up and even run fast. So I think this is the best we can start with. If we're able to bring together all the key stakeholders and share what is needed, then absolutely it is going to add value and make us grow better.
Thank you, Frank. And Jacques. Have we lost Jack?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Suddenly this moves. I apologize. So, Jack, over to you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. I think as a provincial or at a state level, our concern really is around the entire tourism ecology and across the entire tourism value chain. So we see the role that we play very much one of coordination and advocacy. We've just actually gone through the process of developing a 10-year strategy for our industry. So as part of that process, we had to look at a lot of the structural barriers that our industry is faced with. And that includes human resource development. And so for us, it's how do we address declining human resource development indicators? So the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, these bodies have all reported on the fact that, particularly for South Africa, that we've been actually dropping when it comes to investment in human resources and skills. So that obviously for us from a destination point of view is very concerning and worrying. In terms of our approach to COVID-19, we use what we refer to as the CAR model, which is around containment, adaptation, and recovery. And I think what we've seen with the first and second waves is that there's like a stop-start happening at the moment in tourism, and this will probably in South Africa see a third wave as well. And it's how do we open up again, and how do we as government support the industry during this very, very challenging process. So in the Western Cape, we expect up to 70,000 jobs will be lost due to COVID. So that's a massive, massive impact on job creation. There's also work that we're doing around advocacy around service excellence. And because, as I mentioned, we are concerned about the lower indicators that, so the World Economic Forum, they report on, concerns around service excellence in South Africa in particular. So that is a big concern for us. Another concern is obviously youth employment. For South Africa, that's a major challenge. And what we're seeing is that we're just not creating sufficient opportunities for youth to enter the industry. And then I think there are other issues as well. And what COVID-19 has taught us is that we have to build more resilient industries by focusing on our domestic and our intercontinental markets. And that's something where I think all of us across the continent have not done as good as we should, given the fact that Africa is still poorly connected in terms of things like air access and visas. So for us, we've been focusing very hard at supporting air access to Cape Town and the rest of the region. And I think this should really be a priority for the continent, is how do we actually improve opportunities for intercontinental travel? Because that will also facilitate movement and learning across the continent, which is very much needed. And then lastly, just also in terms of ongoing professional development, that's also a gap that we've seen, is that, people, they go to university and study and then they work in the industry, but there's not continuous development. And that is a bit of a concern. And then I think the other thing just to mention is obviously we've seen during COVID very much the sort of rise in the use of new technology. So how do we build new skills, like, for example, online reputation management? It came up in the previous discussion as well. So there are new skills that are really needed because the world has pivoted. And I think it's going to have a lasting impact on the way in which travelers consume travel and tourism experiences and products.
Yeah, everything you said is exactly perfect, because one of the things that is really important is connecting across Africa, this knowledge experience, knowledge exchange, partnering in business and all sorts of things. We're in a world now that we've kind of been shoved into, but was already underway. I mean, it was already underway. We just kind of chose to ignore it in the industry. And it's not just Africa, but a lot of people chose to ignore it. And now we quickly have to rethink the way we experience destinations, the way we market destinations, the way we educate, the way we skill people. And it has to be more collaborative, be it academia or between destinations. So the role of the CVV seems to be quite, not only the CVV, the tourism boards and departments, because economic development depends on education and people. What kind of role can you have as an entity that pushes for change, that has a voice in representing the market sector for government and for universities? How strong should the voices be from the convention bureaus and the tourism boards? Because it's such an important sector for Africa. So I'll start with Frank again, because there's only two of us and the two of you. Yes, Frank, how much of a role can you be as a facilitator and as a pressure?
I think, Linda, it's our role as CVBs is really quite significant, given that we do get inquiries and they understand the demands and the interest and all the challenges the industries feel. We stand strong to really advise the training institutions, to advise the practitioners in the industry, talking about the PCOs, the DMCs, the really people that we hear what their challenges are, we hear what their needs are, and you take it back to the right institutions that you need to incorporate some of these needs in their programs. I feel at this stage, there's been a bit of disconnect, and some of them don't even, some of the training institutions don't even understand some of the needs we have in the market. And I strongly believe that moving forward, it's something that perhaps even using the site platform we have, how can we advocate to ensure that some of the incentive programs are incorporated in the training institutions? This is where we would come in as CVBs to ensure that we take the needs the industry is giving us and incorporate them in the programs that will be able to serve our industry. So that's where I feel we can push, and it's really the right time that we do this, given that again, I insist on the incentive for travel program for Africa. This is a new industry, and we all need to get on it and ensure that, we're equipping the industry, and as soon as the world opens, we are on top of it.
Jack, and you, from your perspective.
Thanks. I think similarly to what Frank has been saying, I think coordination isn't always as good as it should be. And I think the one thing that COVID-19 taught us is that the industry can really come together and work together under pressure. And I think, collaboration has actually been very, very good over the past year. But I think, South Africa, for example, has just recently published its list of national scarce skills. And I think it's important that as an industry, we really comment on that national list of scarce skills so that we understand and, that we have the right national list of scarce skills and that there's consensus on what the scarce skills are that we as a country need. And I think that's probably applicable to the rest of the continent as well. I think definitely better coordination with professional bodies, but also with training institutions. So I think there's a major role for us to play in just driving some of those discussions around that. As a department, we do have a skills program, so it's one of our core pillar focus areas, and there is funding available through that program for skills partnerships. And then something that I think a previous speaker alluded to is also just understanding labor productivity and to what extent COVID-19 is going to change the labor market. Because certainly in South Africa, many years ago, there was research done that showed that, a restaurant in South Africa would employ many more people than exactly the same size restaurant in Brazil, for example. And what COVID-19 has taught many businesses is that you can actually run a business on quite tighter labor margins. And our concern is obviously that we would like the industry to grow and recover jobs. But at the same time, we're seeing businesses are actually running smoother, kind of quite lean operations. And will that be a medium to long-term trend, or is it just going to be a passing trend? So I think that's the issue of labor productivity, I think is quite critical as well. We really need to grapple with that.
Do you think, I actually agree, and I think we won't be coming backwards. I think we'll be moving forward. I think that businesses have, first they went into fear, then panic, and now they're pivoting and they're being more business savvy. They're becoming more business aware. And I think this has been a positive element of COVID, perhaps, but this means that you have a lot of human resources that will now need to pivot to another area or to another sector. Here, maybe, what's your position on education for entrepreneurship, teaching people to be creative, to create their own projects based on experience and being re-skilled for that sector, even if it's still in tourism, but incentivizing and encouraging entrepreneurship, because I think this might be a solution for the future. So new business models, innovation, new ideas. Are you seeing that in the market, or is it still too early? Jacques, I'll go back to you and then back to Frank.
I think definitely. I think what we've seen definitely in the market is much greater sense of flexibility and adaptation, and that's come across. We've seen staff from convention centers being retrained to service the BPO sector. I think there's been a lot of that happening already within the industry. And it's about how do we understand that and how do we provide greater support on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial development. I think the most important skill right now is resilience, that we need staff who are resilient, and we need entrepreneurs who are resilient. So I definitely see that as quite a critical issue for us to be looking at. Yeah.
Okay, and Frank.
Hello. Yes, Linda.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I think it's collaboration is going to be quite important, and perhaps even if we look at what is already been provided in some of the training institutions, it's actually there. Entrepreneurship courses are being taught in different schools, but I think what we need to ensure that it happens is to tailor make what needs to be done for the sector. I'll just pick an example of what is happening here in Rwanda. Some of the training institutions have incorporated the events management courses in their programs, but they don't really go into the details of an incentive program. A conference event would be different from an incentive program. And I think that's the advocacy and the knowledge we would bring on board to ensure that what they're developing is really matching what is needed in the industry. And I believe, as we all kept on saying, this is something that we need to take at the continent level. We use bodies like SITE and ensure that, these programs are being cross-cutting and rolled out through different platforms. That's how we can scale up, and that's how we can be sustainable.
I actually think that we have two slots here that are important. And again, I'll keep you on board, Frank, so you can answer this. We have at the moment the need to continue to encourage young people to come into the industry with new ideas and the new kind of passion and awareness, and raise awareness of the industry and how innovative and different it has to be from now on. But we have another slot, which is also highly important, which is we have experienced, seasoned professionals that still have their head in the sand and are waiting for this glorious normal to come back, 2019 to come back. It will not come back. So you need to reskill, retrain, because a lot of these seasoned professionals will also need to know how to work in this new world, because it is a new world, whether we like it or not. Hybrid is here to stay, okay? It's not the end of face-to-face. I don't believe that. Corporates are telling us that they're absolutely desperate for the live events to come back because they do not see value, return on investment in online events. They do not want to sponsor online events. They want to come back to the live event, but they will never be the same as they were before. Okay, so we need to retrain these professionals, Frank. So you have a whole pool of professionals that need to be retrained and upskilled, and you need to also inspire young people to come into the industry. How can we handle that, and what role does the Convention Bureau play here?
I think, Linda, it starts really with what we were discussing. One is that we all agree that every day we learn. I think if we do accept that fact, then we can improve our knowledge and skills every day. And it so happened that the pandemic has taught us actually that the way we organize events has changed completely. I agree with you. Hybrid is here to stay, whether we like it or not, whether you design your event to the best to ensure that, you have physical presence participants, but there's going to be a component of hybrid. And it never prepared us, and we never got really, trained for the hybrid. So I believe with the current people in the industry, we need to, upskill, we need to train on the new technology. We need to get to know where we're going to find our businesses. And so I believe that's a gap that is, we're currently facing, and that's a reality. And so moving forward, we need to ensure that these people are able to, get better in terms of training and, collaborate with different people that are in the industry and that have the capacity, that have the knowledge, and we better basically upgrade ourselves. The second part is the entrepreneur, the young people, the youth we want to inspire. I believe there's still a lot of opportunities within the business event industry, and all these business opportunities are now available. We need to ensure that they go down and we start preparing our youth that are going to be the future leaders in the industry. And it is at this stage that we start developing the partnership. We get to the training institutions, inspire them, tell them what has happened. Irrespective of the challenges we're still having, I believe eventually in the next maybe 3, 4, 5 years, the sector will come back, because we all understand the importance of the sector. It's just beyond the, bringing a group to a destination. It's the legacy, it's the job creation we're talking about, it's branding the destination, it's the, the foreign exchange, and it's the entire value chain of impact, the business events bring to our industry. So in the end, we all understand what it means to our industry. And I believe if we start now to inspire the youth and the young people, then it's better for all of us.
Thank you. We'll be talking about this inspiration at ATF, you and I. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, Jacques, your perspective.
Yes, very similar to Frank. I think, there's already definitely hybrid events are here to stay, and we've certainly seen this here in the Western Cape as well. That I don't think there's a going back. I agree with you. I think COVID-19 has fundamentally altered the way in which we consume travel experiences, and that's just going to be with us for quite a while. It's highlighted for us as a destination, for example, how crucial a focus and emphasis on health and wellness is. So, safety has always been something of a concern for us as a destination, and we've now had to revisit that to say, well, it's not just about personal safety, it's also about health and wellness more broadly speaking. So that's really informed our approach to destination development and product development more generally. So I think we're looking at longer lasting sort of impacts, and we can't wish away these impacts. They're not short-lived trends. We have to plan for how this new world, as you were saying. So I think that's definitely the direction that we're taking, is that the industry is fundamentally changing, and that this change is happening quite rapidly. So there is a need to respond quite rapidly to these shifts within the industry.
So I have one foot in the market and one foot in academia. And what I have found, like Professor Nelly is telling me in the chat, is that students and young people want to be part of the recovery. They want to have a voice. They're not giving up. They want to be asked and invited in. And I do believe that the way to do it, and the great role that tourism departments and convention bureaus can play, is by actually embracing these young people that have this entrepreneurial spirit and are quick on the ground and have ideas. But above all, companies and corporates and our sector has to stop working in this funnel where they don't really, they have a method. There are no methods anymore. So we have to look to young people to bring new ideas, to work in an entrepreneurial, disruptive way. And maybe we, our generation, can learn from them and continue to implement and innovate. Thank you guys for your contribution. You were amazing. We are limited in time, but we can have another conversation very, very, very soon. I was so honored to be talking to you today, and thank you for inviting me. Tess, over to you. I hope we answered a couple of questions.
Absolutely. That was a very valuable discussion, Linda. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jacques, for joining us. And to the audience, thank you for hanging in with us. I know we're hopelessly over time, but I think it's important. I just want to steal 5 more minutes and just hear some parting notes from our moderators today. I'd like to start with John, then Linda, and if Padraig, if you would kindly wrap it up for us. So, John?
Yeah. Thanks, Tess. Yeah, from my side, I think really there's some great points have been raised in the chat, and I think that ultimately what this is going to do is it's going to create disruption. I love what Linda said at the end, which is these younger people, you need to bring them in, number one, and just listen to what they've got to say, because they do understand the future probably better. And I think that ultimately, for us as practitioners, the thing that I wanted to take away and challenge people to do really from both sides of the aisle, and I put this in the chat, is, academia can really benefit from the commercial and the real life examples. What can you offer to an academic program? Is there somebody you can reach out to and offer your skills and say, hey, I'm willing to come and give a talk, etc.? And vice versa, is there anybody on the panel from academia that thinks, oh, do you know what? It'd be great if I could get Nicanor or Tess or whatever to come and give a lecture about the real life. And the only thing, as I said earlier, to challenge on that as well is to say, look, this is we do it in a proper way. It's not, oh, would you just pop in and give us half an hour? But we're going to we want you to scope this out. We want you almost to deliver this module or to help us deliver that module, because there are things we can do. As I say, I'm doing some lecturing at some universities here in the UK about African aviation, and I do that every year. We give a couple of hours, a little lecture about it. It's great fun, and it's nice then to see those students come through and stay in touch. But can we do more, basically? So that would be my parting shot. So thanks, Tess, for today.
Thank you, John. Absolutely agreed. One thing we'll definitely do following this discussion is we'll pull it apart and come up with the key takeaways and share it with everyone. Linda, over to you.
Well, John has said most of it, but if I have to leave a message, it would be about recovery is everyone's responsibility. It's not the government, and it's not students, and it's not business owners, and we're not little victims, and we're not poor little things. The impact was on everybody. It's all our responsibility. I refuse to accept the governments move this slowly. And very often I actually want to go up and smack them. And I'm not a violent woman, because they need to move faster. They need to listen to us. We're on the ground. Without the companies, there is no recovery. If we all die, there is no recovery. But if they don't move forward and create conditions, then there is no recovery. If we don't innovate in business and we accept the innovation, the ideas, the energy, the passion of young people, then we will not move forward. And you can't continue to be the way we were before. So we all have a role to play. And the reason like John said, the reason I went back to university and created postgraduate courses now over the last couple of months is because we all have a role to play. And I'm willing to put my experience at the service of others, and I'm willing to listen to others younger than myself and learn from them. And that is the only way that we will recover. I don't care if you're African or Japanese or Chinese or Irish or Portuguese, it doesn't matter. We have to move forward together. And if you need to shout at government, shout at government, but you need to also have an open mind in business.
Thank you, Linda. Very passionately stated, and we'll definitely be banging that message across. So, Padraig, over to you for our final parting shot. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, and thanks to everybody who's contributed in a fascinating couple of hours discussion. I was reminded of a brilliant article about 2 weeks ago in the Financial Times from Yuval Noah Harari, the guy who wrote *Sapiens*, and in it he's kind of assessing where we stand now 1 year into the pandemic. And he points to the triumph of science. We developed a cure, we developed a vaccination in time that would have been absolutely unimaginable So in a way, it indicates something at the heart of human endeavor that can be done if people worked together. In the same article, he excoriates politicians, as Linda has done, for the way that they've behaved. And I think we all can agree with that. One of the great things about this particular session, I think, is that we've had policymakers, we've had academics, and we've had practitioners all together listening. And that's where the solutions will come from. They'll come when we bring the biggest possible group of stakeholders together to actually work together. That's how the scientists did it in relation to finding the vaccine, and how we can do it in terms of saving our industry from the devastation that it has been experiencing, but keeping that IP, keeping the intellectual property, keeping the expertise, keeping the skills with us, so that they're part then of our recovery, which I think will be spectacular when it comes. So thanks, Tess, for bringing this to all our attention, for getting such a wonderful group of people together to discuss such an important topic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for those lovely closing remarks. And again, thank you for everybody for sticking with us and putting up with my techno challenges in the beginning. We'll definitely have a follow-up conversation on these topics. And as Patrick said, thank you to all our panelists and moderators for taking the time in joining this very important discussion today. And on that note, have a lovely week. Thank you.